Welcome to second class in our financial wellness, second lesson in our financial wellness boot camp. Tonight, we're going to talk about budgeting the easy way. I'm Matt Michelson, your local financial professional here in Northern California. For those of you who are local, for those of you who are not, we're easily accessible online as well as locally. So as with the first lesson, I believe financial strategies used by the wealthy should be available to everyone. You've gotten to a good place. You're in a good place. You've done some great things to get you where you are today. Your current habits and your current efforts have gotten you to a good place. But if you want to get to an even better place, you need to change some of those habits, change some of those things to establish new habits and get to an even better place. And tonight we're going to teach you a very important lesson that will help you get there. First off, we're going to recap what we went over last week. So I went over some information about the 5 main challenges people need to consider when it comes to their finances. The most common thread with these concerns is the idea of confidence. How confident are you when it comes to how well your income will provide for your desired standard of living? How well your income will allow you to cover your monthly debts, your taxes, retirements, loss of income. We talked about financial wellness and how financial wellness is equivalent to certainty. And certainty is how we define that. And we also talked about the Smiths and the Joneses, how we compared a family that has a financial plan to a family results for a family that doesn't have a financial plan. And again, you've got decent financial habits or good habits, but you need even better habits to get even farther along in your financial wellness. So also, as we mentioned last time, you went to school most likely somewhere between 12, 16, 20 years even to learn how to make money. And during that schooling, you probably had very few, if any, lessons on how to manage the money. So we're 1 hour done with our boot camp and we have 11 hours to go. Those are 11 small hours compared to those 20 years you were in school. But these next 11 hours will be an incredible benefit to you on how to best put in place a plan to help those 20 years of school be more worthwhile. We're going to reconnect back to the Joneses and the Smiths. You recall the Joneses, again, didn't have the plan and the Smiths did, and they ended up in very different places with very different results. We're going to reconnect with them by talking about one key difference in their behavior that produced their different results. So we're going to do that by taking you back to 1972. 1972 at Stanford University, a professor of psychology named Walter Mischel, he did an experiment with young children to test their levels of self-control. His researchers gave each child a single treat and told them that if they waited and they didn't eat that treat, they could end up earning a second treat simply by waiting. And the researchers then they left the room for up to 20 minutes before they came back. And this video, I'm just going to show you a couple clips of this video that recreates that experiment.
Okay, scoot up. Okay, so here's the deal. There's a marshmallow. You can either wait, and I'll bring you back another one, so you can have 2, or you can eat it now. So you can eat it now, or you can wait, and I'll bring you back 2. Okay? Okay, I'll be back. Okay, so I have 1 marshmallow for each of you.
Okay.
1.
Don't eat it?
And here's the deal. You can either eat it now, or you can wait till I get back, and you can have 2. Okay?
Okay.
So eat it now, or wait till I get back, and you can have 2. And I'll be back in a little bit.
If we wait, you'll give us 2?
Yep, if you wait, you'll get 2. Or you can eat it now, whichever you want. Okay? I'll be back in a little bit.
I'm gonna wait. I wonder what we're gonna do. We're gonna eat it? If I want to eat something. Or we're still not gonna get to. But if you wait until she gets back, she'll give you 2. She still won't give you 2 because you ate it. Some of it. And I didn't eat a single bite of mine. So go and show her, okay? Let's see, Richard.
Here it comes.
There.
Oh, what happened?
She ate her.
Oh, okay. Hi, Hunter, you waited. You get 2. Good job. You can eat it. You can eat them now.
All right, so looked like some of those kids were just being completely tortured by that experiment. It's very interesting how differently each of the kids responded, as you could see in the video there. So what were the results of Dr. Michel's study? Does it match what we saw here in the video? The actual results were that 2 out of 3 children were not able to wait, and they ate the first treat. Only 1/3 actually waited and received that second treat. So interestingly, Dr. Michel and his researchers did several follow-up studies over the subsequent decades and found some interesting insights from the children who did eat and the children who didn't eat or waited and got that second marshmallow. The kids who waited tended to have higher SAT scores, lower rates of obesity, lower levels of alcoholism and drug abuse, better responses to stress, and overall better social skills. These experiments proved that self-control, or the ability to delay gratification, was critical to success in all areas of life. So you can probably observe how this plays out everywhere around you. So think if you're a student and you delay gratification of watching television and you do your homework first, well, you're going to end up learning more and getting better grades as a result. Think about if you have self-control, your exercise self-control when you're grocery shopping, you might buy less junk food. And then because you don't have junk food around your house, you're going to eat healthier and stay more fit. Think also about money, that if you wait to spend money on things you don't really need, you might want them, but you don't really need them. If you delay that gratification and don't buy it now, you can increase your standard of living later. How did this play out with the Smiths and the Joneses? So we saw that the Joneses had a consumption mindset, like the kids who ate their marshmallow right away. Consume, consume, consume. Live now. We only live once, and very impulsive. Do things kind of by the seat of their pants. The Smiths, on the other hand, were like the second set of children who waited and got that second marshmallow. They said they wanted their assets to grow. They're willing to hold on to the asset now and not consume it, and so it can grow and create more later. And that way they're looking for the long term to have a more balanced life, so they can enjoy it some now, and then they can also enjoy more later. And they planned things out in order to make that happen. So out of 187 countries in the world, the US is the 13th wealthiest nation per capita, meaning the average US citizen makes a higher salary than 93% of citizens in other countries. That means, yet somehow, with being the 13th wealthiest nation in the world, a third of us feel unsatisfied financially. 1 in 4 Americans has more debt than savings. The average American spends $1.33 for every $1 they earn, which means that they're 33% in the hole every single month. 40% of Americans overspend on things they don't even really need. So these aren't regular expenses that just is to live on. These are things above and beyond what it costs to live that they're actually spending their money on. So lack of income isn't our problem. So if lack of income isn't the problem, what is our problem financially? It's overspending. So why do people overspend? There's a bunch of different reasons. Some of them tie back to the video that we just saw in Dr. Michel's study, but there's other things that cause it as well. So inattention is one of them. We're just ignorant about our money. We just don't really know how to manage it. So inattention would be people overspend because they don't really have any idea how much money passes through their accounts on a daily basis. Some people, a lot of people don't know, and some people choose to stay ignorant. That's the fingers in the ears or covering the eyes. It's just easier to ignore their problem than to do something about it. Others may be unintentionally ignorant. They just assume they know what they pay for, everyday cost of living, but their real numbers may be actually very far from reality. Financial illiteracy is another reason why we tend to overspend or why we're financially ignorant as a country. If people don't know what they're actually spending their money on, they're almost certainly not going to be aware of things like taxes, added fees, surcharges, all these other things that come along with the money they're spending. So if they don't know where they're spending it, they of course don't know all these other things that are going on with their money and their spending. Digital money is another reason why we're ignorant about what we're spending, because it disconnects us from our money. You're not physically seeing dollars leaving your hand or leaving your wallet. Instead, you're just seeing little digits flashing on a tiny screen, whether it's your computer or the check stand at a store. Those digits come and go very quickly, and they don't really connect with your brain. And so you're disconnected from your money. Second big reason why people overspend is lack of self-control or emotional spending. You've probably heard of the term mad money. That's money people set aside to spend so that when they're sad or angry about something, spending money helps them feel better. So our emotions are often entangled with our money, which means it takes a lot of willpower to say no to something that you want immediately. And the deeper the emotions are around something you're buying, the more willpower it's going to take to avoid making that purchase. So anyone who really has those deep emotions around material things or around money, it can be very, very difficult for them to keep their spending under control. And the last issue is, that we're going to mention here is no financial plan. If you don't have a plan to aim for in the future, your immediate needs are going to take precedence always. And with nothing to focus on in the future, the here and now is always going to win out. On top of those elements, we also live in an advertising world. So advertising executives have long known that it takes roughly 7 exposures to a company's product before a consumer will take action and buy that product. Now, from the moment you wake up in the morning till the time you lay your head down at night and close your eyes to go to sleep, your senses are assaulted by messages from companies pushing their products and services. Now, sometimes it can be as simple as just seeing the logo on a bar of soap or a car that's driving by that you don't even consciously notice, just the name of a brand. Other times it's an advertisement that overtly interrupts a TV show or a YouTube video that you're watching. Sometimes it's just hearing friends or family talking about stuff that they like, or you smell a restaurant's food as you're driving by on your way home from work. Anybody who's been at a mall probably smelled cinnamon rolls that aren't anywhere near the food court. There's a reason why Cinnabon puts their restaurant or their stores away from the food court, because the other smells of the other restaurant's food would cover up the smell of their cinnamon rolls. And half the mall is filled with that smell to bring people into their stores. So with each exposure, it may not cause you to immediately desire that company's products. And it doesn't guarantee you're going to buy, but it heavily influences your buying behavior. And this onslaught is inescapable. If you combine that with modern technology, we'll call big data and artificial intelligence, modern advertisers, they collect thousands and thousands of data points about each one of us based on our online habits. You've probably heard about internet cookies, social media that track your online habits and interests, free apps on, GPS on your phone. They know where you go. They know how long you spend where you go. They know how you get there. Even though you don't necessarily type in that you're driving a car, it can tell by your speed and by your location. If you're following a road, it knows you're driving a car. It knows if you're riding a bike or walking, or taking public transit. When they know these devices know in your home, so Siri or Alexa, smart thermostats, web-connected appliances, all of these things track data about you and your habits, your living habits. And then even without having devices that are tracking you, you have past purchases. When you use a loyalty card at any store, and you type in your home phone number and then you swipe your groceries to get a discount, they know they're able to tie those groceries or whatever it is you're buying to you as an individual consumer. And so they know a history of everything you've bought there at their store. So to illustrate this, I'll share an example that happened several years ago. An irate father called up one big box retailer asking why this retailer was sending advertisements aimed at new mothers to his 16-year-old daughter. And he shortly afterwards, after he called, he confronted his daughter and learned that there had been some illicit activity going on in his household that he hadn't been previously aware of. Turns out she was pregnant. And the reason why the retailer knew that is because she had made some purchases in their store or online that they were able to detect, well, this is typically what an expectant mother buys. And so in order to market to her and to get more of her business, they were sending her these advertisements. So oftentimes these advertisers know us better than we even know ourselves and can influence our buying behaviors. So with all these issues, in addition to the advertising society that we live in, it's no wonder that we're so vulnerable to overspending. Almost half of Americans are financially illiterate because we don't have access to good financial education for the most part. 4 out of 5, or more than 4 out of 5, don't have a written financial plan, so they have no guide to guide them for the future. 69% of transactions are electronic, so we're totally disconnected from our spending. So many, many reasons why we're so vulnerable to overspending. So if you feel like you're in this boat, you're definitely not alone. So budgeting is important to help us overcome this. It's definitely a step in the right direction, but, and this is a big but, 75% of people say that they budget, but only 15% actually stick to it. And the average American, the reason why we can tell that budgeting doesn't work for a lot of people is the average American overspends by $620 a month. So, our emotional brain responds to the word budget much the same way as it responds to the word diet. The connotation is deprivation, suffering, agony. These are depressing things. Instead of thinking about what we want when we're budgeting, we think about what we can't have. So typical budgeting approach is inherently flawed because just like diets, it implies scarcity, and our survival instinct is to do whatever we can to overcome that scarcity. Now, if you're like most people, 75% of people who tried budgeting and failed, 60% of those people who actually start fail. This, if you're one of those people, you're definitely not alone. We'll mention a few more reasons why here in just a second, but ultimately, these challenges can be overcome. But traditional budgeting, the way people normally do it, we don't recommend it. It really sucks. And so here's a few reasons why it sucks. So take the example of the envelope method. We'll take this imaginary consumer, Sarah. She buys a bunch of envelopes for budgeting. She tucks cash into each one of these to spend from the categories in the store, or she'll take a receipt from a store and tuck it into each of these categories to track her spending. She takes her first outing to the store, and at that store, she spends $118, almost $118. And she gets home to allocate this spending amongst these different categories, and it shatters her already. Her system is shattered, because within the same trip to the store, she bought groceries, she bought clothes, some hobby items, some personal care items. And then, she also realizes that she's got some tax that she needs to allocate. So does she allocate the tax to each of those categories? How does she split up this one receipt? There's some complexity to this that makes it really challenging and frankly, really boring and stressful for a lot of people. So that's a big reason why it sucks. A lot of people will use online or electronic tracking systems on their phone, apps on their phone to track their spending. And these can help track spending. But again, we still have a lot of these inherent flaws with budgeting overall, even with electronic systems that can help out. Just look at the complexity of this. This is just 4 or 5 examples. Also, budgeting is made challenging by seasonal fluctuations in our spending. We don't spend exactly the same in the summertime as we do in the dead of winter. Our utilities are going to be completely different. Our clothing is going to be completely different. The food that's available on the shelves is going to be completely different. So different seasons and different times of year is going to, throw off a lot of these budgeting efforts. Also, traditional budgeting requires that you start each month with a forecast of what you're going to spend in each of dozens of categories. And this assumes that you're not going to change your mind about any financial decisions for those next 30 days. So these rigid budget categories, they don't support at all our constantly changing wishes and emotions. You can go through any one of these emotions, in a given day, much less a month. So people fail at budgeting because of the inflexibility of that approach. It does not account for these unforeseen emotional changes that occur during a month. Also, it uses a shaming and scarcity approach, especially these electronic apps. Just the coloring themselves, reds and yellows, bad, caution. It requires us to constantly make decisions that make us feel like we fail. You missed adding something to this budget category or overspending in that category. You failed to budget, for one expense, or you read a chart that then caused you to have some other failures, and so on and so on. How many months are you going to endure this emotional beatdown before you give up? And statistically, most people don't last more than about 6 months with their budgeting. So this new approach that we're going to talk about, what is this approach? You don't need categories. You don't need forecasts that tie you down and are outdated the minute you finish them. The approach is really simple. All you need to do is to not overspend. Don't overspend. So you might be thinking, well, all this buildup just for that? Yes, this is the whole point of budgeting, but it gets lost in the traditional approach because of the over-complexity and confusion of all of it. Sticking to just one single point of not overspending enables you to have a much simpler way of approaching this budgeting challenge. You don't need to track 20 different categories. You don't need to constantly make decisions of if you pay for this or pay for that, which category it goes in. You just need to know one single number that's readily available for you to see. And we're going to call it your spendable money. So you can spend this money anywhere you want, guilt-free, As long as you don't overspend over that number, you can be confident you're going to be financially okay. So think of it, use an analogy as food. Say you're average person burning 2,000 calories to maintain your body weight, and you eat 2,000 calories. Overall, all else being equal, you burn 2,000, you eat 2,000, you're going to maintain your body weight. If that's what you desire, great outcome. If you want to gain weight, which most people don't, but let's say you want to gain weight, you need to, and you burn 2,000 calories, you need to eat more than that. So you eat 2,500 and you gain weight. Let's say you want to lose weight. Well, your body burns 2,000. That means you're going to need to eat less than 2,000. So you eat 1,700 instead. All else being equal, over time you'll lose weight. So that's the relationship between what's coming in and what's going out and what the end result is. Same goes for money. If you spend less than you earn, you'll end up in a better place. If that's what your goal is. So here's the magic formula. Again, it may seem obvious, but here's what it is. Income minus bills minus savings gives you your spendable number. Your income minus your bills minus your savings gives you your spendable number. Now, there are many ways that you can manage money, successful or not. There are a lot of different methodologies, approaches, gurus, advisors, financial services, tools, strategies, but there's just one formula that brings all of those together, and this is it. It's very fundamental. It seems obvious when you look at it, but many people fail to realize how crucial it is, and they completely mess it up by not living it and by over complicating it. The great thing about it is how simple it is, how logical it is. You take your paycheck, you pay your bills out of your paycheck, and you set a little aside for your future goals. And then whatever's left is yours to spend until the next paycheck. It's really that simple. This is also grade school math and really simple logic. So there is one caveat that for people who have fluctuating incomes, so these would be like non-salaried employees or people who are self-employed, the strategy doesn't take away your fluctuations in income, but it may remove a lot of other variables from traditional budgeting that still make it far easier to budget with using this method than using the traditional method we just talked about. So I want to highlight for you for just a second that your spendable number is truly guilt-free money. You can spend it on absolutely anything you want without having to second guess yourself. You can take trips, you can hang out with friends, go do fun outings with friends, donate to your favorite charity, buy that fun thing you've had your eye on that you really want. You can buy things that bring you moments of happiness. Why not? All your bills are taken care of, your future savings is taken care of. Why not spend on what you want to? So it's a closed system, these three variables, income, bills, and savings. So in order to stay in balance, any long-term imbalance, in the short run, an imbalance you can absorb that later. You can adjust and make changes, but any long-term imbalance can really throw your finances off and really have a negative impact on your lifestyle. I'll show you how this works. So let's say your bills increase by $100 in a given month. If your bills go up, then your spendable money and your lifestyle needs to go down to accommodate for that. So higher bills leave you less money than to maintain your desired lifestyle. Now you could borrow money to maintain that desired lifestyle, but that would increase your bills even more as when you eventually have to pay that back plus interest. And when you eventually run out of borrowed money, your lifestyle is really going to drop. You remember in the previous lesson, we talked about the 2 rules of borrowing. We recommend that you only borrow if it increases your income somehow, or if it forces you to save more. So if it raises these other 2, income and savings. That's why every dollar, borrowed adds to your burden of your bills, and inevitably it reduces your lifestyle and your savings for the future. You will also recall the difference between how the Smiths and the Joneses handled their bills, handled their debt. the Joneses relied heavily on debt, and that really impacted their lifestyle negatively later in their life. So here's another example. What happens when your income stays the same and your bills go up, and you decide to cut out savings in order to stay, maintaining a comfortable lifestyle? What happens then is you give up your financial future. You give up that safety net for emergencies. You give up your future dreams. This again is what the Jones did. They, kept their bills and their spending high, and then that ate away at their savings, or it meant they didn't have money for savings. Now let's look at some other examples here, changing the numbers a little bit. Let's say somehow you're able to find a way to lower your bills. You can put more money away toward your future dreams and still keep the same lifestyle. We're actually going to go over in lesson 4 how this works and how to lower those bills to increase your savings and your lifestyle. In this scenario, your income and your bills stay the same, but you make a conscious decision to increase your savings to build more protection for yourself or to achieve your future dreams even faster. So saving more means you have a little bit less money to maintain your current lifestyle. Like the children with the marshmallows, you're making a small sacrifice now for an even bigger payoff later. So this $100 savings is turning 1 marshmallow into 2 marshmallows. So again, in lesson 4, we're going to talk to you all about strategies for lowering your bills that'll give you more money both for your future dreams and for your current lifestyle. So you don't want to miss that lesson. It's really powerful. One more point. With this money formula, there's only 2 ways to increase your lifestyle or your savings, and that is to increase your income or lower your bills. When you increase your income and your bills stay the same, you still have money to put away towards your future and money to increase your lifestyle. And in lesson 5, we're going to talk more about how to increase your income. So if you understand this simple formula and these dependencies and the relationships between all these and how they work, budgeting becomes very, very simple. Income, again, is usually fairly predictable and consistent. Bills are almost always predictable and consistent. And for, we talked about seasonal fluctuations. You can actually call up a service provider like your power company. If you pay a lot more in summer, if you live in a hot climate, like here in California, you pay a lot more in summer to cool your home. If you live in colder climates, you might pay a lot more to heat your home in the winter. And so you get these fluctuations in seasons. You can actually set up what's called a balanced billing plan. So call up that service provider, tell them that you want to set up a balanced billing plan if they have that option available. Many of them do. And you'll be able to make a single payment that's even throughout the year. And then if there's a difference in how their rates and your usage or how their rates are anticipated, that they are off a little bit, then you may have one true up payment sometime in the year. But for the most part, then you can have a much more predictable payment every single month. So when you have the same income and the same bills and the same savings target every month, that means your spendable number is going to be relatively close, or if not the same exact number every single month. So if these numbers are so constant, then why do people fail at budgeting? They fail because they don't know their numbers. So our first homework assignment was to calculate your income and then calculate your bills. And here's why. You can see those are the first 2 elements that are foundational in this plan. So did you do that? So when people don't know their numbers, they become easy prey for marketers and advertisers, some of these pressures that we talked about before, emotions. They end up buying things they don't need, and they jeopardize their future financial security and even their current financial security. They take on too many financial obligations that just, it takes them completely off track financially. Another reason why people fail is they don't live by their numbers. So even if they know what their number is, but they don't live by it, knowing the 4 numbers is half the battle, but living by it's the second half. So know your numbers, hold to them, and you will see financial success. So if you completed your homework from the previous lesson, again, you should know your numbers for your income and your bills by now. You should know how much you make per week and how much your bills cost you per week. Now, we're going to use an example here using these numbers as just just an illustrative example. We'll use the example of $1,000 a week income, $400 a week, which is actually pretty average for the American homeowner, and $100 a week savings. If you add all those numbers up, or actually if you take the 400 and the 100 away from the income, you end up with $500 left over as your spendable number. Now, for right now, people typically, once they get used to this, they'll look at their numbers monthly. But in the beginning, we want you to do this weekly until you get used to it. Doing it weekly will actually help you get this habit established, and then eventually you can move to a monthly number. So here's the challenge. Remember, we call this a boot camp. And a boot camp is not just sitting and listening to things and then turning your computer off and going about your day, the rest of your week like you did the prior week. This is about actually putting things into action and learning new things through taking action. So the weekly challenge that we're going to give you is for the next 4 weeks. Actually, it will go longer than that, but let's just start with a 4-week target. The challenge is to spend less than your weekly spendable. In order to do that, you have to know what that spendable number is. So go get those numbers and put them down. Now, in the example we just mentioned, we're going to start with a $500 spendable number. Here's how it's going to work. In the first week, using me as an example, I take my $500 spendable number, and on Monday, I get my latte, I get my lunch, I go grocery shopping on Tuesday, put some gas in the car, do some online shopping on Wednesday, make a donation to my kids' school on Thursday, do a bigger grocery shopping trip on Thursday afternoon, go out for a movie date with my wife on Friday night, get a haircut on Saturday, and have brunch with my extended family on Sunday. So in this particular week, how did I do? Started with my $500 spendable number. As I spent on each item, I gradually worked my way down and spent $460 total that week, which means I was left with $40 unspent. Great, so that $40 rolls over to week 2. And I start week 2 with now $540 rolled over from last week. So now I have the same Monday spending with latte and lunch, Tuesday groceries, Wednesday retail purchase. I saw that there was a really good deal going on, a really good sale on something that I needed to stock up on. So I went ahead and spent a little bit more than I normally would in order to stock up and hopefully save money in the future by spending a little bit more now. Thursday, made an online purchase. Friday, bar with friends. And Saturday and Sunday, I actually had a weekend away at an Airbnb with my family, took a small trip. And in this hypothetical situation, I had these larger expenditures than I normally have in a given week. My big retail purchase and my big weekend away with my family, which means this week in week 2, I started with $540, but I ended up spending $760. Oops, I went over. So I start my next week $180 less. So I roll over that minus $180 for the next week. So now I start week 3 with only $320 as my spendable number. So I skip the latte on Monday, get lunch to help me get more back on track, buy my groceries, gas online, buy some more groceries Thursday, take out on Friday night, and a barbecue with friends and family on Sunday. And so I'd spend a total of $400 this week. Now, $400 is actually a little bit leaner than I would normally spend in a given week. Remember, $500 is my normal spendable. Because I spent too much last week, I started at a lower number. I should have spent only $320. So I spent $400 instead of $320. So I start the next week with $80, but I'm getting that margin closer and closer to zero out, and that's good. So I'm getting closer to being back on track. And it's only taken me about a week or 2 to do that. So in week 4, I start with minus $80 rolled over from the prior week, have the regular Monday expenses, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday expenses. And over the course of the week, I spend $420. Started the week with 420 spendable number. I spent 420, which means I'm now back to break even. So I was able to get things on track. I didn't have to worry about any specific category. I didn't have to worry about every single purchase. I was able to just spend. And, again, as I went overspent a little bit, I'm able to underspend a little bit somewhere else. I don't have to worry about categorizing any of that. It's just not complex at all. No need for envelopes, no need for tracking it all, within an app to tell me which category I failed in and which one I did okay in. It's just all in one lump sum. So it's super easy. Now, keep in mind, there's something else going on that you may not have been tracking. Over these 4 weeks, we had our $500 spendable number, but we also had some other money that we had set aside. Recall that we had set aside $100 a week. So we had that $100 a week automatically being sent over to our savings. Now, so not only have we spent within our means, we didn't overspend by the end of those 4 weeks. We stayed within our spendable number on average over those 4 weeks. Plus, we now have $400 additional dollars saved, set aside. So this could be, depending on your situation, it can be used to accelerate debt repayment to get out of debt faster. It could increase your lifestyle. You could increase an emergency fund to smooth things out if something bad might happen later. You want to have that emergency fund set aside. You can make a bulk purchase or an investment. You can treat yourself or continue to save up for an annual trip. Whatever is on your wish list or whatever you think you need, you now have that $400 set aside, just that $100 a week that you set aside. So the point of all of this is, once you know your numbers and you begin to live by them, you don't need to budget every single penny. All your bills are taken care of and your savings are automatic. You can spend your spendable number on whatever you want. So comparing the two approaches, traditional budgeting approach versus this much simpler approach. Simpler approach, you really only have two categories. Is it a bill or is it a spendable number? A spendable category. Just two. So there's basically two categories. Traditional budgeting, you can have dozens of categories. You don't need, because there are no categories, essentially, you don't need to split categories with a simple method. It's very flexible. It's very easy. You don't have to have additional accounts. With traditional budgeting, sometimes people will have multiple bank accounts depending on what their categories are. This simple method, you don't need multiple bank accounts, so it simplifies that quite a bit. It is possible to have this money tracking automated. Again, we have an app that you can download, Wallio, Wallio. We're working on the next version of that to upgrade it, to modernize it, and it will automatically track your spending. That function is being developed right now, so that it will just give you every day, it'll give you what your spendable number is, and it'll update it for you automatically. So it does all the tracking for you. The simpler method, this is guilt-free money. You don't need to feel guilty about spending. If you overspend in traditional budgeting and you have 20 categories, every category you overspend in is like another mark against you, another strike against you. In this case, you only have one category that's flexible, and that's your spending. That's your spendable number. So you're not being hit 8, 10, 12 times with that feeling of failure. You might overspend a little bit, but it's only in one category, and you can, as we saw in the last example, you can get on track very easily. Traditional budgeting really emphasizes scarcity and penny pinching, whereas the simpler method creates this abundant mindset that I really can spend on whatever I want to spend on. This simpler method is something that my family adopted a long time ago. Before we went to this method, we used to labor many hours each month to keep our budget. We actually used an online tracking system. And even with our online tracking system, we'd have to basically draw straws each month to decide who had the unenviable job of sitting down and reconciling all those transactions every month. So, we hated doing it. And, we did it even though we hated doing it because that's what we were taught to do. We didn't really question why, we just did it. We're, constantly having to adjust purchase priorities, timing our bills to avoid overdraft fees, things like that. So when we went to this much simpler method, it's so much easier for us now than it was before. We don't fight over who has to endure that budgeting chore each month. We have all of our recurring monthly bills paid automatically, so there's no more need to log into our accounts and pay them manually every single month. We don't need to pay overdraft fees because we're not forgetting to pay things, we get busy and we would forget in the past. Even if we had enough money to cover something, we would just forget, and we pay even 24 hours late, you got to pay that fee. We don't have any overdraft fees on our bank accounts anymore. We haven't paid a penny in interest on credit cards in a long, long time because, instead we actually get cash back and we earn travel points that pay for vacations that we love to take. This is a picture of a recent vacation we took to Disneyland after Star Wars Land opened up. We got to go and enjoy that. Fantastic experience. So we have money for anything we want. We don't have money for everything we want, but we have money for the most important stuff, the stuff that's most important to us, including vacations and other spontaneous mini adventures that we like to do. So most important of all, about all of this is money just stopped being a source of contention and worry for us. So if you want to keep if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. I really love this quote from Stephen Covey. He was known as a business management guru. He's an American educator, and he wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I love this statement, and I live by this statement because I know when I get into a rut and I feel like something needs to change, I realize I've got to change in order for my results to change. So if you want to get a different result, you got to try something different. So try putting to the test what you've learned today. There are, again, only 10 more sessions to this boot camp following this. So try starting to do this. No, don't try. Start doing this now. Try this budgeting method now for the next 10 weeks, and then decide for yourself if you haven't gotten better results than what you were getting before. These numbers will help you calculate your spendable number. Once you know your income and your bills, pick a weekly savings goal to calculate. That will help you calculate what your spendable number looks like. And remember, knowing your numbers is half the success. The other half is to put them into action. So start living by this simple budgeting method today. Don't wait till next week or the week after that. Start early, start now. We know from previous lessons how critical it is to get started early. Some final points I want to make to close on a humorous note. You really can afford anything you want and feel amazing because you can stick to your budget and have you can stick to your spendable money and have what you want. Especially if it's a pony, you can have that too. And being a 2 marshmallow kid doesn't guarantee you're going to have success and become a billionaire, but it's a huge step in the right direction. As we've shown you today, we've given you some strategies to become that 2 marshmallow kid. So we'll see you in the next lesson, and grateful to be on this journey with you. Take care.